you're speaking with our high school coding fellowship here at the Knowledge House. And so everyone here is focused on really entering into the tech space, learning new skills in progressive web development, data science, UI, UX, cybersecurity. And so they're really focused on this summer doing an intensive training program to immerse themselves in the world of tech. We have fellows here from our New York office, as well as our Los Angeles and our Atlanta, Newark office. So we've got people from across the country here today to learn about really your career journey in the tech space. And so what I'd love for you all to do one by one is to quickly introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background, what you do at Google, and then we'll be able to jump into some more deeper questions. And so I'll pass it over to Amelia first to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Amelia. I've been at Google for about 4 years. I started off as an SRE, or site reliability engineer, and I recently switched to a software dev position. I've worked on observability the whole time. So the first product that I worked on was an automatic alerting system to let services know to let the developers supporting services know if the service was experiencing any problem using sort of automatically collected data across Google. And in my new role as a software dev, I'm actually working on the place where all of that data is stored. So the sort of system at Google that collects and stores all of the monitoring data of all of the systems.
My name is Sebastian Hooker. I am a customer engineer at Google. And what that means is I help our customers build their solutions. So if you're familiar with the cloud, it is a very, very, very broad term, which really just means a data center managed by someone else. So when we think of like what a customer even does in a data center, it's almost everything these days. So when you go to your favorite store or you go to your ATM to get money out of the bank, everything you do there like touches a computer somewhere. And what Google has done is we've built a ton of computers for these customers to use. However, it's pretty complicated, like signing up with Google and moving all of your computing power to Google. So I help them do that effectively.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hassan Thomas. I've been at Google now, I think going on 11 months. My role here is a CPM, which is a cloud program manager. And at a very short sentencing, basically what I do is lead program efforts in the cloud. And that could be a number of different things. A couple of highlight points you might hear in the news or read about is that Google is big on digital transformation. And some people might say, well, what is digital transformation, right? And that's essentially like not just moving your systems and your software to the cloud, but it's also about the process and how you do your current business to do it more efficiently and effectively. So then that's comprised of resources, not only just in Google, but with some of our partners. So essentially on a day-to-day, my job is to work with folks like Sebastian, Amelia, to work on their like cross teams to work on deliver not just the software, but give our customers the journey of how to start operating and work effectively within the cloud. So I work with a number of different product teams. We have different partners who specialize like in web development, AI and ML, also internally in Google. A little bit about me, my background started, won't tell you how old I am, but years and years ago, I used to be a software developer, like some of you. I started off in .NET, I moved to Java, kind of a garbage disposal, so to speak, just doing anything and everything, and then moved into DevOps. And over the course of years, the experience led me to more program management within the cloud. So a little bit about me. So happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Akin. I am a software engineer at Google. I've been here, it's going to be 11 years in August, next month. Yeah, next month. I currently work on Google Maps. Specifically, I'm one of the people that's responsible for opening hours. So if you show up at a business and it's closed, or hopefully it's open, that's our responsibility or fault, how you want to look at it. I've been on the Google Maps team for about 3 years, since 2019. Prior to that, I was in, cloud or technical infrastructure. So I built networks. So Google has significant network, as you would imagine. And there's a large group within Google that builds the infrastructure for that network. Before coming to Google, I was at RPI, which is it's a university in upstate New York, Troy, near Albany, the capital of New York State. And there I got my PhD in computer science, focused on distributed and parallel and distributed computing, therefore the network. So my, growing up from high school through undergrad and eventually grad school, my interests were operating systems and distributed systems. That's like been my engineering journey. And recently I've decided I want to work more with products where I can easily explain what I do. So I switched to Google Maps, and it's been interesting experience so far.
So my name is Yun. So currently I'm working at the Google research team. What I'm majorly doing is doing some NLP models. For example, in my team, we are focusing on building two models. One is the Smart Compose, which is to predict what the user want to type next. Another one is called the Smart Replies, also to predict, given some previous text message and what do you would like to reply to others, and we just give you the suggestion to you. So that's the current work. And before I joined this team, I was working at the assistant for doing the speech recognition modeling work. And previous to that, I was at the Cloud AI, also doing some computer vision projects. So I have been in a couple of teams in Google now. So before I joined Google, I did my PhD from the University of Florida, and before that, I did my bachelor at China. So I'm come from China. And then very nice, glad to see all of you today. Thanks. Yeah.
Awesome. I want to thank you all for introducing yourselves. A question that I have, and y'all can just feel free to come off of mute, is what did you want to be when you were in high school? So like, what was your dream career when you were in high school? And like, is it different than what you're doing now? And then like, what was your favorite subject when you were in high school?
Dream career, probably designing cars, vehicles. In terms of my favorite subject in high school, it would be maths or computer studies is what I called it, one of the two.
I wanted to study like economics or business in high school, or like maybe even finance. I think in my situation, like I wanted to land in a career that made money, and I think we can all be pretty transparent here and say like in the world we live in today, like unfortunately, like you have to make a decent amount of money to have like a very happy, healthy existence. And I think there's nothing wrong with wanting to create like economic security for your family. Maybe you have to support someone. Maybe you're planning on supporting someone in the future. So I think that transition from high school to college, like finding something that you're good at, or like you think you can get good at. And even if you're not super passionate about it, becoming like very good at it, you might find yourself becoming passionate because you become an expert in the space. Like that kind of translated into my career later on.
In high school, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So after high school, I joined the Marine Corps, and I took the pilot exam and thought I was going to do that. And then medical issues prevented me from being a pilot. And so my mom was a computer science major. She was super awesome. She was writing a language that's archaic now, assembler. Maybe you'll find it somewhere being practiced. But eventually that led me, I was really good at math. So that led me to kind of just exploring a focus in college on information systems and security.
In high school, for me, computer science wasn't even on my radar. Like, I enjoyed math a lot, but I think I probably envisioned myself working in the arts, like in maybe journalism or something like that. I took a very windy road to get to working as a software engineer. Initially dropped out of college, and then went back to study math, and then like switched to astronomy, and then finally to computer science because I had a friend who liked it, and ended up getting a PhD in computer science. So it took me a while to get there, but once I did, I was pretty committed.
I think working off of that too, thinking about journeys after high school, I'd love for a couple of you to share. Working at Google, of course, is a very prestigious company, especially in the tech space. And I'm curious, what were the different steps that you found yourself entering into post-secondary, like once you graduated high school, and how did it ultimately lead to you working at Google? So like a career path, of course, there's so many different ways that you can go, and there's obstacles along the way. And you learn a lot along the way as well. So I'd be curious for a couple of you to share, what was your journey from graduating high school? And it doesn't have to be like in the weeds, but like what were some of the key moments that you found yourself taking, key steps that you found yourself taking to lead to where you are today?
I was a mixed bag coming out of high school. Say like I went to the Marine Corps. I thought I wasn't going to do. My mom actually encouraged me to focus on computer science. I took a couple of courses, didn't like algorithms, whatever, but I did like tech. So I switched my major. But once I graduated college, I excelled at databases. I just love databases, got into data warehousing. And I did not know what I really wanted to focus on, which I envy people who know from high school or out of college exactly what they want to do. That just makes your path so much more enjoyable. Me, on the other hand, I kind of went on this internal exploration of what do I like, what I don't like. And when you are learning, what you want to do for your professional life, I think it's kind of important, which someone had mentored me, like you want to enjoy it and not just see it as work or look at it, unfortunately as a financial means, right? Which it is, but you kind of want to have that joy of getting up, going to work in the morning. So I just went on this journey that started in the West Coast, went to San Diego State, went to Seattle, made my way back to Houston, and I worked in a number of different industries. I worked for United Airlines, used to be Continental Airlines. I worked for Intel. I subcontracted at Microsoft. I was all over the place. I was a mess. And not until recently, in the last 2 years before coming to Google, my prior role was at a startup that went public last year. And I thought that was pretty cool to help them get to that finish line, across the finish line of an IPO. But that was the realization, like I took time back to like ask myself, what is my best move? What does I really enjoy? And I took a month in a pen and paper and wrote down what I didn't like, why I didn't like it, what I did like. And what I ended up finding out is that I loved cloud. And so I was like, okay, cool, cloud. So I was like, okay, where do I want to go do that at? And eventually what happened that led me to interviewing at Google, Microsoft, and Amazon at the same time. I do not encourage anyone to do that. That is mind numbing. However, my past experience as a consultant working on a Google project as a consultant, as a vendor, gave me a little bit of a sneak peek of what it is to be a Googler. How Google operates, how we work within communities, how we help deliver functionality and solve problems. And so that ultimately led to the decision of kind of hunkering down and say, okay, I'm going to go to Google. I don't care how long it takes. This is what I'm going to do. And so and kind of not to get off tangent, but I would say the 2 cents, the things I would leave in this, and as far as this question is, it's nothing wrong if you don't want to know what you want to do, but try to make a list of things that just intrigue you. You might not get exactly right. You're going to start at a company. Some of your experiences are going to help shape your path. And as I'm learning at Google, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. Nothing wrong with failure. These are some of the unique attributes about the Google culture. And I love to share that with you because as you go out into the world, or as you right now experience stuff, you might be writing code, you might not get along with a teammate. That's an opportunity. There's always a silver lining to improve yourself, to improve the environment for the people you work with. So
maybe I can share about my experience.
Sure.
Because as a freshman in the university, I was not in the computer science major. Instead, I was studying some physics or chemics, like more like a science major. But after 1 year, I find that I don't have much interest on that. And then I think the first decision, I think, which maybe important decision for myself, is I decided to change the major at that time. So at that time I changed to the electrical engineering because at that time I feel, like the communication, the cell phone things that are very cool, but I don't like programming at that time. So I didn't go to the computer science major. I go to the electrical engineering. And I think the second important decision for me is maybe to go to the US for the PhD study, because I was, I was born in China and did the bachelor degree there. And in the in the US, I also did the electrical engineering PhD. But when it comes to the graduation and I want to find a job in the market, then I realized, okay, so the electrical engineering, the job opportunity is not as much as those computer science field. So I think another interesting change for my life is that I totally changed my career path, and then instead of doing the more hardware stuff, and then I changing myself into the software field. With that, then I joined Google finally. Even inside the Google, I think there is still some, focus change. For example, initially when I joined Google, I was doing more like the infrastructure, and then, gradually, I think I'm more interested in the, machine learning, the modeling, the statistical stuff, and also, then I jumped into another field and doing new project on that field. So my experience, if I look back all the experience I have, I think one important lesson I learned is always try to stay out of your comfort zone and to always to seek the new opportunities. I think that really helps me to all the way to here. Yeah, thank you.
I know, right? Some of you graduated college recently or a while ago, or you've been working in tech for a while. But especially for our fellows here who are really brand new, right? Like they're in high school, they're just starting their journey here. What does continuous learning look like for you? So thinking back even 5 years ago, what does it look like for you to continue to learn on the job and continue to grow as a technologist? Yeah, like what are some of the online resources that you take advantage of, company resources? Like how do you stay up to date and how do you grow your skill sets?
If you're going to work in technology, like you almost don't have a choice when it comes to continuous learning. And you've kind of been on a path up until this point and probably still on a path where it's like very clear what learning means. Like you learn the content, you probably have a test, maybe it's a standardized test, you pass the test, you achieve a certain level of competence in that, and then you move to maybe like elementary school, middle school, high school, now into college. And along the way, there have always been very clearly defined success metrics. You have measurements in GPAs, SAT or ACT scores, acceptance rates on colleges. It's very difficult to say like where that success and failure kind of sits once you change into like a career world. And if you move into a career in technology, like what you'll find is you're not really learning on the job and in college in your early years, like a specific technology like skill set. What you're actually learning is like the why behind a lot of technology, and actually learning specific technology will take time to kind of like dive into deeper. And what you'll find is that like the technology is constantly changing. So if you completely removed yourself from the technical world for 5 years, which sounds like a long time because it is, you would come back and probably have to restart your learning somewhere along the way. And this is really like a long way of saying like, make sure you're staying current, just like along your entire journey. And when it comes to picking like a specific resource to learn from, it's always easier to learn a technology if you have an actual problem you're trying to solve. So instead of picking up a textbook that has a title that looks, interesting and maybe sifting through that in your free time, pick something that's bothering you, or, at your first job, say like, this could probably be improved with a little bit of technology. And I want to learn maybe Python, and you can kind of like find the online resources that work best for you, because there's thousands of them and most of them are free. Maybe you're like a visual learner, maybe you like tutorials, maybe you do want to buy a book. But once you kind of find like your best way to learn a new technology, and you find an actual problem where you can apply some of your learnings along the way, you'll get through that and you'll have like two outcomes. You'll actually have a solution for that problem, and then you'll have like new knowledge to solve problems like that in the future using a new technology.
I would just also add that I think for me, the most important thing to continuous learning is like staying curious. So like my process usually looks like I build a mental model of how a thing works, and it may be very wrong. But then I just like, when I'm surprised by something, I like follow up on that surprise, right? Like, okay, what did I misunderstand such that like this thing was surprising to me? And then refine my model and sort of iterate on that. But I think the key is just like being curious and not letting like surprises just sort of like pass by, like following up on them.
One of the first things I did learn out of college and someone said, hey, learn COM objects. Don't hear about those anymore. Very old technology. And someone gave me a book and I started reading the rocks books. I don't even know if they make them anymore. And I started just reading, but I didn't have a problem to solve. And that made the journey hard. That just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth of software development. So I just want to reiterate that if you're, it's cool to look at, online YouTube, or here's some friends that, they got a little part-time job or they got a little hustle making websites. But if you're not have a problem that you're trying to solve or understand the bigger picture of what you're doing, just makes the journey that much better. You don't get the value out of it, which means is that whether it's a low-level language like Go or C++, all the way up to something that's like a hypertext, something JavaScript, Python, you can pick it up and just look at the syntax and figure out how to attack it, right? And those are just a good trait. My second thing is when it comes to continuous learning, I think being as a CPM, it's if you look at the job description, it's not a technical job. It's not Amelia or Yoon, like I'm not sitting there writing code. However, the engineers that I work with, the architects I work with, the testers I work with, I have to speak their language. I have to be able to talk, maybe not like talk about object-oriented programming or factory patterns. However, I do need to talk to them, understand, to get estimates to figure out how long it's going to take for them to do a thing, right? To complete it, to test it, what have you. So continuous learning for me is that luckily I do have that background, but in the cloud space, right, where we kind of live at, is like where software is being built and services are being offered and stood up. I have to be able to understand our products instantly enough to be able to advise my customers, right? So when a customer says, hey, Hassan or Google, hey, what is this thing that we're about to take on? Do we really need it? When you're dealing with a customer who is not an engineer, you got to be able to explain in layman terms what this thing is and why, and have that conversation. And if they still don't understand it, or they might say, hey, we need to bring our engineering team. Great, right? I'll go get some resources. But as the client facing, the tip of the spear on a program, I have to be able to convey that level of knowledge that Google's known for. It does help that if you'd like to geek out and read these things. So for me, sources that I use is obviously within the Google realm and the Google domain, and I kind of fit for purpose. Some programs I work on are AI ML. So right now I'm actually taking internal courses to understand how to model, how engineers work on building a model. The previous program, I was API integration, right? We use APIs on your cell phone, logging into your bank account, what have you. So understanding how Google's Apogee API service works, right? What's entailed in that? What will developers have to do? So I think if you have a healthy dose of curiosity, it helps. But I think being as a program manager, the continuous learning is how Google builds services, how we implement them, and how we can work well with our customers. So those are two items.
So for many of our fellows, they're going to be graduating high school in the next couple of years, and then starting their journey, right? Maybe that's college, 4-year, 2-year, other pathways. And so for those that are interested in entering into the tech space, what are some words of advice that you would have for them to make themselves as strong a candidate as possible and to really explore all different pathways within the tech space?
Be willing to do internships for free. And I say that because when I was in college, there were a lot of opportunities. When I was in school in San Diego, Qualcomm, there was a unique story. Qualcomm offered interns, but internship, but you weren't getting paid for it. Callaway Golf was offering internships, but you weren't getting paid for it. And a lot of people did not want to do that. They're like, I have to get paid. I chose to go work at Qualcomm. I was doing MFC, C++, Microsoft Foundation, MFC, C++, can't remember exactly, but I was doing basically rewrites of existing code. That 6 months experience, because it went in from summer into the fall and close to the winter. When I graduated, I went to a hiring workshop, and Microsoft was at the campus, and I had that on my resume. And the person I spoke with asked me what I did, and that separated me to have an interview at Microsoft. So I would say, like, don't be afraid to separate yourself, give yourself a unique experience. That will help you to be able to tell a story, right? When you get out of college, you might have one or two or a handful of people who have the same degree. All you're unique. But if you do like internship, whether it's paid for or not, be able to tell a story. When people look at a candidate, they're not just looking at the skill. They're looking at, like, kind of like Google, like, what can you do now and later on? How do you attack problems? So if you can be able to tell a story of how you solve a problem, or how you're a part of a team and how you work with a team, those are things that interviewers are going to look for to help separate different candidates. So
I would say you need practical experience. Internships are always great. There's also research projects with your professors, like independent study, or even like open source. So basically, some body of work that you can refer to, that you can do stuff. This also has the benefit that you can know what you don't like to do. So let's say you're building websites and you don't like to build websites, you probably want a job where you build sites. So I would say practical experience is very important. And even for internships at Google, they kind of expect you to have some of the practical experience. I don't know if I would say it's there, but that's how it is.
Working off of that, you mentioned projects and like open source. Would that be something along the lines of like keeping an updated GitHub, or working on projects outside of school? So you're taking college classes where you're going through a boot camp program. For you personally, did you work on maybe like passion projects or things on the side that you were able to show your growth in this space?
For me personally, no. My I guess body of work was my research at RPI. So like I did it on my own. Yeah, I did it on my own basically. So that was like experience that I can write code. But I would say for the interns I've worked with and other engineers I've worked with, they've all like either have an internship, or if internships depend on the situation you're in. So I came to America as a foreign student, so sometimes it's hard to get an internship. Open source is always available to anyone wherever you are to like work on that. Obviously, if you want to be an engineer, it's easier to do open source. And if you want to be like a project manager or a program manager or project manager, yeah, that's like more a nuanced role. I would say GitHub is a good start, but so you don't want to be a software engineer and then get to work and like the first 6 months you're like, I hate this job, right? So if you can like actually get into how it work with other people and seeing if you like the job and you enjoy the job, that's gonna you can get that experience working on a project where other people are working on it. You don't get that experience if you're just the only person working on it with your own passion project. It also forces you to communicate with people about how you build software. So we have this I guess stereotype that engineers work on their own. For better or worse, that's not true. You work with lots of people, and people are very I'm gonna say sensitive about the work they do. So it's easy to be misconstrued. So you want to get into the habit of like understanding your working style, understanding your communication style, and the only way to do that is to like build something and get experience.
Thinking about mentorship for the Knowledge House, it's a core part of our programming. And I know as you move throughout your career, there's always different individuals in your life that fulfill different roles as mentors. Maybe it's professional, maybe it's technical, maybe it's just someone that you can talk to. So I'm curious, feel free to just come off the mute to share. What has your experience with mentorship been? Like, how did you identify somebody to be your mentor in your career? And do you currently serve as a mentor for someone else? And what does that relationship look like for you?
I think you're going to find many different mentors throughout your path, and like they're going to change. So if you're finishing high school or early in college now, you might find a college senior who becomes a very good mentor, and you might meet them through a club or a leadership activity, and they can really help you through some of that like initial job hunt that you'll be faced with in a few years. And they're going to be a much better person to help you with that than someone who's been in their career 10 or 20 years. So I wouldn't always focus on like a seniority title when you're looking for a mentor, and instead focus on like, how is this person in the next step of where I see myself, and how can I leverage their knowledge to help me get to that next step? Not how can I find the CEO of a company to talk to me, once a week. Like the advice you'll get is going to be very dependent on your own career journey. And with that, I would say like, don't be scared to like fire a mentor or move on from that relationship. Like the best mentors will help grow you, and eventually you will outgrow them, and that's okay. So don't let a mentor be like the ceiling of your own potential, when you can have multiple mentors at a time. You can find new ones throughout your career, and always be finding someone who's one or two levels above you, but not super senior and not necessarily like below where you're trying to be. And then once you do hit an opportunity where maybe you can offer some advice as that college senior, just be willing to like give back, because what you'll find is like the people who are most willing to give and not think like, what can I get out of this? Opportunity will find them, and that reputation will stick with you a lot longer than you just trying to leverage other people for your own growth.
So I currently mentor two students. One is a graduate at my alma mater, and another one is he's going to be starting at CMU in the fall. I would say it's easier to find a mentor today than back in the day. There's a program called IMCS, which I'm going to type in the chat, and they provide mentors for African American students. There is also like different organizations like Deaf Color, and the big one, NESB, which provides those opportunities for you to find mentors that are not like within your specific circle. One upside of having a mentor that's somewhat divorced from where you are is that hopefully the problems and the challenges you're facing are going to be common as high school students going to college. We've all been there, and we've all had the similar transitions. So hopefully the advice you're going to get is going to be advice you'll need is going to be relatively general. And as I said, I have been doing this mentorship for I think maybe 5 years, and I've had 2 mentees so far. I assume I'm not the only person doing it, but it's obviously there's a lot more people willing to mentor than there are people willing to be mentored or looking to be mentored. So it's easier than it should be.
You can be both a mentor and a mentee at the same time. That's my current situation. I have 2 mentors actually at Google, and also 2 mentees. And one thing to add there is that the way that I got my mentors, my best mentors historically, not just at Google, has been sort of organic. I think that often like programs can be really helpful, but you're more likely to find the person best suited to provide you the sort of advice and guidance that you need sort of organically. Both of my current mentors, one was someone that I just met with during one-on-ones for technical reasons. And at some point I realized like what I'm really getting out of this one-on-one, some of it is technical stuff, but other is a lot of it is like me asking you for guidance on how best to deal with company politics and political situations. And can we make this like an official mentorship relationship and talk about that, like have this time to talk about that? And they were like, yes, definitely. And another was someone saying to me, hey, I think that some of the problems you're facing, there's this other woman who's probably faced similar problems, and would you like me to connect you with them so that you can have regular mentorship sessions? And I was like, yes, and it's been so useful. So yeah, look for those organic opportunities to find a good mentor.
I appreciate you all sharing so many great insights here about your careers, your journey. We will have more series coming up, and so there will be, what I recommend is keeping these questions fresh of mind, and you'll be able to ask for future panels as well. But I do